Today is an audience favorite. We are doing another Q&A. So welcome to September's Q&A episode. I am looking forward to getting into your questions. Now, again, I give a quick little glance over the questions, and there's some really good juicy ones, but not like in a gossipy kind of juicy, just like we're going to get into the meat of some things and some tough situations and some really good questions. I'm looking forward to answering today's questions. Just a reminder that if you have a question and you have not submitted it, we need you to do so. We need content to be able to continue doing these Q&As once a month. Head to the link in the show notes. You can put your question there. It can be completely anonymous, and it can have to do with anything. Obviously, a lot of you want to know about homeschooling and raising children. Your questions could be about faith. You can ask me some funny, wacky, whatever kind of questions to get my opinion. I would love to be able to answer those. Let's now get started on today's episode. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where we talk anything and everything homeschool and all that encompasses the homeschool lifestyle. I'm your host, Leigh Nguyen. I'm a mom who never intended to homeschool, and suddenly I am here, 14 years later, with 2 homeschool graduates and 1 more to go. No matter where you are in your homeschool journey, Little by Little Homeschool seeks to empower and encourage you to carry out this amazing calling of home educating and discipling your children. It's not always easy, but I'm here to walk alongside you because I promise that these years are worth all of your effort. Grab that load of laundry that needs folded, settle in at the kitchen sink to wash those dishes, or tie up those walking sneakers, and let's get into today's topic. Because I know that you like shorter episodes, you don't want to listen for an hour. Listen, I have a hard time listening to a podcast for an hour unless I'm going to go for a really long walk. And my kids are older. I have the time to do that. You don't have that. So we're going to kind of set a timer here, and I'm going to see how far I get in these questions. But in the end, there's one final question that I have taken some time to look at, and I really want to round out this episode. It's going to get you. It's really going to, I just read it and I had tears in my eyes. So I'm looking forward to getting into that question. And I think it's important for you to hear that question so that you know how somebody might be approaching things. And yeah, it's going to be good. So stick around to the end. First question says, first she says, "Hi, Leigh." Well, hello. She says, "We have 3 children, ages 5, 3, and 1. Our son, the firstborn, does not get much interaction with other adults besides his Sunday school class on Sundays. We live far away from both sides of our family, as well as recently he has issues with challenging authority, ours authority as well, and those in church. Is this common for boys to be more," she said in air quotes, in quotes here, "testy? Our other 2 children are girls and do not exhibit this behavior. We do discipline when needed and try to reach his heart about the issue of obedience. We are new to homeschooling, and I am concerned at times that we are sheltering him from interactions that may be helpful. Is testing the limits common for boys? How can we help reach his heart better?" When culture tells us that there is no difference between boys and girls, they obviously have not been a mother, because we see it. And especially as a homeschool mom, we see it day in and day out. Now, we're going to just kind of today give just some generalities about boys and girls. I'm not saying that boys have to be a certain way and girls have to be a certain way, and that there can't be some type of crossover with their personalities. We could have girls that are very headstrong and strong-willed, and they know what they think and how they feel, and they're able to articulate that well. That doesn't mean that they are a boy or anything like that. It just means that that's the way that God has wired them. But we're going to speak today in generalities. Let's go back. Just a reminder. My daughter is our firstborn, and then I have 2 boys. So there is a difference of 2 years between the first and the second child, and then there is 3 years between the second and the third. So with a total of rounding out 5 years between my oldest and my youngest. So we have this sweet baby girl, and she's cooing, and she's just the sweetest thing. 2 years later, we have a boy. And I was so used to girl world. I just the sweetness. I grew up in boy world with younger brothers, and I guess there just had been enough time that had been separated from that. I mean, I had done babysitting. I don't know. It just really hit me that our first boy, even as a baby, yeah, he cried like a baby, but he would growl and kind of grunt and make just noises that she never made in 2 years of life, especially as a baby. And I was like, oh, wow, there is definitely a difference in personalities and possibly just boys, girls. And then let's then go a couple years later, had my second boy, and he would coo some, but he also would grunt and growl and just make more aggressive noises as a newborn baby. And I was like, what? Okay, there is definitely a difference. So we have to acknowledge that there is a difference. And in general, boys are going to push the limits. And you know what? It's hard as moms. It's hard as homeschool moms when we are trying to home educate them, but we're also working on their character and trying to get to their heart and share the gospel with them. But we're also just trying them to get them maybe to take a nap, and we're trying to get them to not destroy the house so that you don't have to clean up from it, and to sit down long enough to possibly eat a meal that's going to satisfy them so they aren't asking for a snack in 45 minutes. So there's a lot of that balancing. And I'm going to share another story here. So again, girl world, sweet, playing, and all this stuff. Then when my son started being able to crawl and get around, because at that point she could build things and play with toys and he couldn't get to it. He started being able to crawl and she was so utterly devastated. The fact that he would just crawl past maybe a tower she had built with blocks or like those big Lego, I don't know that they're necessarily Legos, but those bigger kind of Lego things, and she'd build a tower or a wall or a castle or something and just regular wooden blocks. And he would crawl past, stop for a second, reach over, knock it over, and then continue on. And she would just be in tears. The thought of doing that never once entered her head. It still doesn't enter her head. And my boys now are 20, going soon 21 and 17. So they still would rather kind of destroy some things. And I have to be like, okay, don't tell me some of the things that you guys are doing. But boys are going to push the limits, and it's really hard. I would say my older son is more strong-willed than my younger. And so there was a lot of, like you're saying, testing the limits. Definitely. You're saying, here's the line. And he would be putting his foot up to the line, stepping over the line, and looking at you. I can remember some very specific stories of just saying to myself, like, I could just let this go, and recognizing when I was letting the behavior consistently get out of control, the behavior just got worse. Out of control just became bigger. And when I would then say to myself, okay, you have got to step in and take care of this because it's just going to continue. And that I would. And there was a lot of discipline and discipling, especially with my boys, especially with my older. He does not mind me saying this to you at all. He currently runs his own business. He's a boss. He's manages maybe a dozen different people at the same time. And so I want to encourage you that this can be, we can funnel it and train it for good and for the glory of God. But that's going to take time, that's going to take effort, and that's going to take intentionality. So it is completely normal for him to push the limits, to test you, and it just is going to be normal. And so when it comes to boys, I have found that dad really has to step in and be a lot more involved. And at a certain point, and I've not really talked about this much, I can in some time in the future, maybe in an episode, at a certain point, myself being the mother, being the primary source of parenting, because I was there all the time, I had to turn that over to dad. And dad then had to raise them and show them how to be a man. And also during that was also bringing other men into his circle. And so you can get to this. And I know you live further away from family, but there can be good and really great men from church and that can kind of get involved as well. But right now at the age of 5, it's going to be a lot. And depending again on the boy and how much he tests, it might require a lot more of your energy than maybe your other kids do, your girls do. And it might require just overall a lot more of your energy. But I'm going to tell you that it is completely worth the effort. Next question says, do you have any tips for how to give kids an appreciation for different cultures and an understanding that many people around the world live very differently than them? My husband and I both grew up traveling a lot and would love to do that with our family because we see so many benefits, but likely will never be able to afford travel on that scale. So we want to find other ways to teach our kids and inspire curiosity about other cultures. I get that. I would have loved to be able to travel a bit bigger with our kids, but there are just finances. I mean, we have to be realistic about this. Finances, and my husband didn't have a job that he could leave. So therefore, it really wasn't a thing. So in my family, my kids had a front row seat. My husband is Vietnamese, so our children, therefore, are half Vietnamese. And so that was a culture that our kids were really able to get into and to understand the culture and the food and the language to a certain extent. But a lot of people don't even have don't have that in the family, and that's okay. There is a book, it's probably still around. Now listen, when I started homeschooling my kids, it was 15 years ago, and there's so many other resources, but I remember there being a geography book that was focused on cooking. Some of you might know exactly what I'm talking about. Go ahead and Google it. And what it did was allowed you to get to know different cultures through food. And so you would do a study like geographically and learn about whatever country that was or whatever culture that was. And then you would create food for it. And you would really be able to get to know a culture more than just sitting there and memorizing facts, because nobody wants to memorize facts. I mean, I think it's great to have some type of atlas, something that does have specific facts in it. When kids are saying, what's the flag for, name a certain country? You can just very quickly go ahead and look that up. If you're trying to do things obviously you can go ahead and look that up very quickly. But I was like, I want my kids to have a book resource that they can go to anytime because they don't have access to the internet at those ages. And so I think that would be a really fun thing to do. I feel like I might have purchased it at one point and we never quite got around to it. I know, it's just, we all have those things. We purchase and we never quite get around to it. But that might be an interesting thing for you to do. Also, I remember looking out for opportunities that were local to us. I remember a couple of times our church would maybe host missionaries, or they would host groups from other places that were from other countries. And I remember sometimes I remember specifically one time there was like a concert that a group from another country came and did. And I was like, we have to go to that. So we were able to watch and be exposed and then talk to the people afterwards. So I really think that the point is to be intentional about it and showing your kids that there are a lot of cultures out there. And just because they're different doesn't mean that it's bad or that your way of eating. So if you go back to that geography with eating, and it doesn't mean that, you probably prefer maybe a good juicy bacon cheeseburger, but to someone in another country, they might be like, what is that? And maybe they would like it, but we should be curious about other foods and stuff. And that's, I think, is a great introduction for kids, is be able to expose them to different foods. And it's kind of like a way to be able to get into it. And maybe someday we'll be able to travel, maybe be able to, even if it's not necessarily to be able to do it often, maybe to do it here or there. And I don't know if it has an overlap with this with different cultures, but I know Greta Eskridge had written a book about adventuring. And so maybe you can read that book and it might be able to combine a little bit with that. And so, I mean, again, there's the internet, there's YouTube, you can watch things, but I think anytime you're able to interact with people is a really good thing. And take a look at churches, local churches, your church, see if there's missionaries, people that are going to be in the area, see if there are different opportunities even within a driving distance, and you can take some field trips. The next question says, do you have any tips for adjusting my teaching style to match my kids' learning style? I was the kid who loved workbooks and could sit still for hours doing schoolwork. And so that is how I'm inclined to teach. However, I have a very active little boy. I'm noticing a trend here with little boys. And I am a little intimidated when I think of how I'm going to teach him when he starts school, because he is so different from me. But I really want him to love learning, so I know I need to adjust. That last part, friend, that is key. We need to adjust what our expectations are. And yes, there are some kids that are going to love sitting there and doing workbooks and doing their schoolwork and checking off things off the list. And this could be boys or girls. Tends to be more girls than boys. My daughter loved to be able to do workbooks and that kind of stuff. My boys would rather have sat there and broke the pencils and the crayons. They thought that was more fun to do. And so I get it. When we have this expectation of this is the way it's going to look, how about we just lower our expectations a little bit and we adjust? We get to study our kids. And so don't necessarily worry about how am I going to educate him when he's in high school. It sounds like he might be 4, 5 years old. All you need to do is say, how can I create a love of learning and answer his questions and expose him to just the beauty of learning about the world when he's 4 or 5. Just focus on right now. Don't worry about how you're going to do it later on, because guess what? 9th grade comes after 8th grade. 8th grade comes after 7th grade. I know I'm using grades, but, it just kind of allows. So let's just say, 14, you have 15 comes after 14, 14 comes after 13, 13 comes after 12, if we want to do ages instead. So don't worry too much about it. Be open to things, get books and listen to podcast episodes and get ideas. Nobody is going to tell you exactly how to do it step by step for your child, because your child is always going to be slightly different than someone who maybe wrote a book or somebody who wrote a blog post or shared in a podcast episode. But take what you can from what you have learned from them and apply it to your child for this year. You might even take some notes and say, okay, this might be a good idea to do in a couple of years, but just understand some kids are going to be more active and you're going to have to do homeschool in short bursts of time, especially when you have a 5-year-old boy. And you might say, okay, if I can get him to sit here or we can do something for 5-10 minutes, maybe it's you reading a book and he's just playing Legos or he's rolling around or he's, throwing a ball against a wall. I don't know, something that allows him to be active while he's doing it. There were many times I didn't think my boys were listening because they were doing something while they were listening. And guess what? They listened even better because their hands were busy. And before we close out, here's my last question that I was asked that I really want to share with you. And this is the one that just brought tears and really got my heart going. And I hope that as you listen to this, you pray for this new sister in Christ. She says, I'm a new Christian. I feel like a fraud even saying that, but I have been reading the Bible and praying and developing a relationship with God and Jesus. My husband and I were both atheists, not born atheists, but they're both atheists when we met and got married. And while he isn't overly rude about me finding the faith, he isn't really interested and makes small comments sometimes that make me feel dumb. I'm not sure how to explain it. My question is twofold. The first part is I'm going to read the first question and answer, and then we'll do the second question. As someone who is very new to this, but wants to bring my kids alongside me as I'm learning, how do I do that? I'm not an expert, and it feels weird trying to teach them something I'm still learning. Now, I don't know how old her children are. They could be young enough and have no idea that you are basically just one tiny baby step ahead of them. Or they could be older. So if they are younger and they don't know, you can just tell them, Mom's learning with you. And they'll probably, especially if they're younger, say, oh, okay. They don't know anything different. If your kids are older, say maybe, elementary age and older, just tell them. Say, I'm new to this too. Let's learn together. Let's do this together. Let's learn about God and Jesus and the gospel and how this fits into our life and the amazing world and life that he's created. And just, it's okay to be honest and tell them. There's many times I think it's very good for us as parents to be honest and tell our kids the truth and not hide behind this superiority. Yes, we are still the parent. We are still in charge. But just letting them know, I'm still learning this too. So how do you bring your kids alongside you? I would read the Bible. If your kids are young and you're wanting to expose them to the Bible, but not quite sure about reading directly from the Bible, get a children's Bible and read it together. And then as they ask questions, also alongside, have a Bible for you. I really appreciate so I grew up with a New International Version, the NIV version. So if you're all new to this might be a little bit like, what? But I have actually really appreciated after moving to the ESV, the English Standard Version. I really appreciate that version. So I would recommend that if you want to go ahead and get a version of the Bible, you can get it on Amazon, probably find one for $20 or less. But I like the ESV version. But even just a children's Bible, and read through it and learn and share what you're learning. Listen to podcast episodes, listen to sermons online. Let your kids listen to these things, and you guys together can learn together. But let me go back to your husband you're saying you're not overly rude about you finding faith. And the Bible does talk about believers when one of the spouses is and one is not. And I should have looked this up, but you can probably Google it as well and find out. It would be in Paul's letters when he talks about how to be, and really it's just focusing on the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, and just growing in those areas. And I would recommend, if it's possible for you to be able to find, there are women out there who are also in a similar situation as you, and see if maybe you are able to find some Christian friends and see if any of them know somebody that you'd be able to connect with, so that the two of you can talk through this. Because somebody else is going to understand this really well, or maybe it's somebody whose husband has come to the faith and has walked this road. I would just caution against being overly open and sharing too much until you know that this other person, this other woman, is somebody that you can share with and is gonna hold tight your secrets, and she's not going to gossip about it, because people can say they're a Christian, but we don't always quite know until we see the fruit of their life as well. But try to get connected with other Christians, other moms. See if there is maybe some type of Christian mom Bible study that's during the week that you guys can go to and be able to connect with others. Second part of the question is, how do I handle, all right, I should have read fully the question again. How do I handle the situation with my husband? It feels like I'm hiding this from him because he doesn't really approve or disapprove, but I know the Bible is clear about not denying your faith. Thank you for your time. You are welcome. I'm going to answer this question, but I do want to encourage you as the listener to stop and take a moment and pray for this sweet homeschool mom who has come to faith and is at the beginning of this journey. And so I would encourage you, we don't need to know her name. We don't need to know anything about her, but just know that she is searching. And this is so amazing. I'm just over, like, the tears that came to my eyes when I first read through this question when it came through were tears of just happiness and joy. Welcome to the sisterhood. Let's go back to how do I handle the situation with my husband. So same thing. And if your husband is not disapproving of you teaching your children, then go ahead and, he's given you permission by not disapproving, and go ahead and teach them about your faith. And it can be hard. Find ways that you can connect with him otherwise. Still do your date nights, still do things. And the verse in the Bible that I'm thinking of, let me pause this and let me look that up, because I feel like I really need to have that. So one moment. You won't even know I'm gone because I'm going to pause this and come right back. I found the verse. It is from 1 Peter 3, starting in verse 1. It says, "Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct." So that's 1 Peter 3, 1-2. Make that your mission. Make that what you focus on. That just by the way that you live, he will notice something different, and he will desire that as well. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you would like to submit a question, please be sure to check out the link in the show notes, because I would love to be able to answer your question on the next Q&A. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If it was just what you needed to hear, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend? And if you would like to connect more, social media links and more are in the show notes just for you. I promise to see you back here real soon.